Picture staring into the stormy depths of our solar system's largest gas giant, only to witness an eerie emerald flash, a phenomenon the space agency miraculously photographed just a short time ago. Zipping by at an astonishing pace, this fleeting spark very nearly slipped past our instruments completely unseen. Might this sudden burst of light mean that the King of Planets is still hiding mysteries we have overlooked for countless years? More importantly, what does an extraterrestrial event like this mean for humanity on our home world? In reality, cosmic researchers did not simply get lucky and find this spectacle by pure chance. They have kept a relentless, watchful eye on this massive sphere for ages, entirely thanks to a highly specialized robotic explorer. Blasting off from our blue marble back in 2011, this probe spent 5 years traveling before finally arriving at its planetary target in 2016. Ever since that arrival, the spacecraft has endlessly circled the gas giant, beaming back mountains of invaluable scientific measurements. The primary goal of this probe is to peel back the layers and reveal the exact chemical recipe forming this massive world. It aims to map out the chaotic weather patterns and unlock the profound mysteries buried way down in the planetary core. Fast forward to 2020, when the probe's primary imaging instrument managed to snatch an incredibly bizarre snapshot right around the northern polar region. A dazzling neon-tinted spark erupted, blazing across the camera frame at a truly staggering velocity. Snapping a clear photograph of anything zooming that rapidly through the cosmic void is a monumentally tough challenge. Because of that sheer difficulty, this particular photograph left the scientific community absolutely stunned, begging the question of what on Earth, or rather, what on Jupiter, this radiant emerald light actually was. The most logical answer, and the one most experts agree upon, points straight to an extraterrestrial thunderstorm. However, electrical storms on this massive sphere behave nothing like the familiar rainstorms we see out our own windows. Out there, colossal weather systems brew high-voltage jolts right inside towering toxic clouds, churning with water and ammonia, packing a punch that dwarfs our fiercest hurricanes. These tempestuous events can actually forge bizarre visual spectrums, such as that eerie, vibrant green. Yet, imagine for a moment that this radiant spark is not an electrical discharge whatsoever. If it is something else entirely, why had our lenses never caught a glimpse of it prior to this? It is entirely possible that this phenomenon is a permanent fixture up there, simply zipping by too rapidly for any earlier imaging tech to freeze in time. Should our instruments cross paths with it a second time, researchers could dive deeper into the data and finally unmask the true nature of this cosmic riddle. Before that happens, virtually every theory we have remains nothing more than a well-informed hypothesis. Naturally, you might wonder if this distant anomaly has any consequences for our own blue marble. While experts confidently assure us that we are in absolutely no danger, finding this glow remains a monumental leap in planetary science. It serves as undeniable proof that dramatic meteorological forces like thunderstorms are active on entirely different celestial bodies. Occasionally, they take on far wilder shapes than we are used to, much like the bizarre conditions observed on our rusty neighbor, the red planet. Researchers recently realized that the dusty air surrounding this desert world is practically buzzing with a continuous electric charge. To put it simply, microscopic electrical storms are actively dancing across the Martian landscape. Let us rewind the cosmic clock to the year 2021. As a swirling tornado of grit swept right over the agency's six-wheeled robotic explorer, the team down here anticipated the typical sounds of whistling breezes and scratching dirt. To their utter shock, the machine's audio sensors captured a distinct, quiet, snapping noise instead. Initially, this bizarre acoustic blip left the brilliant minds back on Earth completely baffled. Fast forward to today, and the scientific community finally believes they have cracked the code behind that mysterious crackle. It turns out that auditory pop was almost certainly the sound of energy releasing right into the fragile Martian breeze. Essentially, bite-sized thunderbolts. Visually, this looks absolutely nothing like a terrestrial tempest, meaning you will not see any jagged, glowing rivers of light tearing through the heavens. The local air density is simply too incredibly weak to support massive bolts, so the energy manifests as miniature glowing zaps. Regardless of their incredibly small scale, They absolutely qualify as legitimate atmospheric electrical discharges. This groundbreaking realization formally crowns our rusty neighbor as the third celestial sphere outside our own, right behind a pair of massive gas giants, confirmed to harbor such storms. You might be asking how they actually detected these invisible sparks. The secret weapon is a highly sensitive audio recording device bolted right onto the rover's mechanical neck. Throughout a 24-month period, this clever gadget soaked up roughly 28 full hours of extraterrestrial acoustics. Buried deep within those sound files, analysts managed to isolate 55 incredibly brief, distinct snaps. Every single one of those audio blips perfectly mirrored the exact acoustic signature of a miniature spark releasing energy. To visualize just how microscopic these zaps are, picture that sudden, annoying jolt you feel right when your finger brushes a metal handle after shuffling around in socks. Indeed, every single one of these miniature Martian bolts vanished in a fraction of a second. Yet 7 of these peculiar readings perfectly matched bursts of electromagnetic static. That is a massive smoking gun indicating invisible currents arcing through the atmosphere right beside our robotic explorer. But have you ever stopped to wonder how a dead world generates lightning in the first place? Here at home, spectacular thunderbolts are born when frozen water crystals violently smash together high up in turbulent thunderheads. The red planet, however, is a freezing, bone-dry desert completely devoid of such torrential weather. What it does possess in absolute abundance, though, is incredibly fine sand. As vicious gales swirl these microscopic particles into a frenzy, they grind together, aggressively swapping electrons back and forth. Astrophysicists love to label this mechanism with a mouthful of a term: triboelectrification. Think of it like scuffing your socks across a carpet. The friction inevitably generates a serious static charge. Eventually, that pent-up energy snaps, unleashing tiny shockwaves alongside bursts of radiation. Those exact chaotic signatures were precisely what the Perseverance rover caught on tape. While microscopic zaps seem completely benign, their planetary impact is incredibly profound. This constant static barrage fundamentally alters the very chemical makeup of the Martian soil. The arcing current acts as a catalyst for highly volatile compounds, stuff like hydrogen peroxide and perchlorates, which mercilessly shred biological molecules. Consequently, this electric scrubbing process might be exactly why finding fossilized alien microbes there is so incredibly difficult. Beyond atmospheric chemistry, these little zaps actively dictate how the landscape itself shifts. Electrified dirt essentially repels itself right off the ground, fueling massive global tempests that sustain their own momentum. It becomes a relentless cosmic engine. Blowing sand breeds more static, which violently kicks up even more sand. Furthermore, understanding this phenomenon presents a very real logistical challenge for us. While a microscopic shock would not kill an astronaut, it could easily fry life support computers or scramble delicate navigation arrays. Mapping out these electrified danger zones is absolutely crucial for our mission planners. It allows aerospace architects to fortify next-generation habitats and ruggedize gear against a highly charged alien landscape. Let us take a journey deeper into the chilling abyss of our cosmic neighborhood. Prepare to have everything you learned in grade school science class completely flipped upside down. Cutting-edge computational data implies that those iconic outer ice giants might actually be wearing a clever disguise. Rather than frozen slush all the way down, they might boast massive, stony hearts wrapped in a surprisingly fragile, frosty shell. Brilliant minds over at the University of Zurich recently crunched a mountain of fresh astrophysical numbers. Their calculations revealed that our telescopic observations perfectly align with planets primarily constructed from solid minerals, rather than frozen water. Actually, the math checks out flawlessly even if those massive globes possess astronomically higher concentrations of stone. With our current technological limitations, it is essentially a coin toss whether those distant worlds are giant space rocks or overgrown snowballs. We simply possess a gaping void of hard evidence needed to settle the debate definitively. This glaring mystery is exactly why the astronomical community is practically begging for a dedicated deep space expedition. We desperately need to park high-tech satellites directly around these enigmatic worlds to peel back their atmospheric layers. Keep in mind, our only close encounters were brief flybys by Voyager 2, back in 1986 and 1989. That legendary probe just snapped a few blurry photos, took some quick readings, and bolted straight for interstellar space. Humanity has yet to send an ambassador to linger and actually map out the bizarre internal plumbing hiding beneath those azure atmospheres. Consequently, we have been forced to stitch together a planetary profile using nothing but digital guesswork and sparse breadcrumbs. While the textbook frozen core theory remains totally valid, it suddenly shares the stage with a profoundly rockier reality. Speaking of shattered paradigms, let us shine a light on Ariel, an incredibly unassuming satellite orbiting Uranus. Despite its pint-sized stature, astrophysicists strongly suspect this icy rock previously harbored a colossal, sloshing subterranean sea. Astonishingly, liquid water might have accounted for well over 50% of the entire volume of the celestial body. We are talking about an unfathomably deep aquatic realm plunging roughly 105 miles down into the dark. Even wilder, that globe-spanning ocean was likely churning away just 1 billion years in the past. For perspective, this tiny world spans a mere 720 miles across, basically 1/3 the size of our own lunar companion. Due to such a minuscule footprint, experts previously wrote it off as a frozen, dead rock utterly incapable of retaining any internal warmth. But what if everything we thought we knew was wrong? Fresh scientific data is painting a totally different picture. Picture the year 1986. Our Voyager 2 probe zooms past the distant ice giant Uranus, capturing snapshots of its moon Ariel that completely shattered the illusion of a dead, frozen wasteland. What we saw instead was a vibrant, restless world, heavily scarred with dramatic fault lines and massive tectonic wrinkles. It even boasted features that looked suspiciously like erupting frozen geysers. Think of it like looking at a cosmic twin of dynamic satellites such as Europa, Enceladus, and Triton. And we already know those celestial neighbors are hiding vast, dark seas right beneath their frosty shells. As time went on, researchers detected chemical fingerprints of ammonia and complex organic materials scattered across the lunar exterior. Here is the catch. Those delicate molecules act like melting snow. They vanish quickly unless some hidden mechanism constantly replenishes them. That mechanism usually points downward, to a hidden, churning layer of liquid water pushing its way to the surface. To visualize this, astrophysicists constructed intricate computer simulations to peel back the layers of this mysterious moon. Imagine an egg. The digital model revealed a fragile, icy shell on the outside, sitting right on top of a much more pliable middle section. Going deeper, they found a vast subterranean sea, all wrapped around a dense, rocky heart. The next step was figuring out how this delicate exterior handled the brutal gravitational tug-of-war happening in space. Think of a tennis ball being relentlessly squished and pulled apart by the immense gravity of its host planet and neighboring satellites. The math revealed something fascinating. If that outer shell measured under 19 miles in depth, it would literally fracture into pieces from the overwhelming cosmic tension. The likely culprit behind this intense stretching? A gravitational dance with a sister moon known as Miranda. Roughly 1 to 2 billion years in the past, their celestial tango pulled the smaller moon's path into an elongated oval. That distortion flexed the surface so violently that it shattered. However, let us not jump to conclusions just yet. We cannot say for sure that a massive hidden sea exists right now, because a tiny body like this radiates its internal warmth away incredibly fast. Should any watery abyss still be hiding down there, it has likely shrunk into a very shallow puddle, making it a pretty terrible candidate for finding alien microbes. Now, let us shift our gaze. Have you ever wondered what weather is like on a gas giant? A sweeping 40-year investigation has just revealed that our solar system's king is harboring a deeply bizarre secret. It turns out the most colossal world in our cosmic neighborhood completely lacks traditional seasonal cycles. After gathering mountains of data from soaring orbital probes and massive observatories down on Earth, experts uncovered some truly mind-bending atmospheric chaos swirling across the mammoth planet. Imagine experiencing wild temperature swings that drag on through a single local year, a massive span equal to 12 full years here on our homeworld. Yet, strangely enough, this colossal sphere never experiences the familiar transitions of spring, summer, or winter that we take for granted. Here at home, Our environment transforms through 4 distinct phases as the months roll by. We owe those shifting climates entirely to the fact that our globe leans over like a tilted spinning top as it circles the star. That specific angle of exactly 23 degrees means various regions of our world take turns soaking up direct solar radiation as we make our annual journey. Contrast that with the gas giant, which stands almost perfectly straight up, tilting by a microscopic 3 degrees. Because of this upright posture, the solar energy hitting any given spot in its thick atmosphere remains stubbornly constant across its agonizingly long orbit. However, this fresh scientific breakthrough uncovered a twist. Significant thermal fluctuations are somehow still rippling across the entire cloudy expanse of that massive world. Stargazers now believe they have unlocked at least one crucial piece of this perplexing cosmic riddle. Clues suggest these bizarre out-of-place climate shifts are driven by an invisible link known as teleconnection. Think of it like a weather wormhole, where shifting atmospheric conditions suddenly mirror each other in completely isolated regions, separated by thousands of miles of empty sky. We actually witness this exact same invisible meteorological bridge happening right here on our own globe. You might recognize its most infamous earthly equivalent: the Southern Oscillation Pattern. That happens when shifting breezes sweeping across the deep western Pacific Ocean mysteriously trigger dramatic floods or droughts across massive stretches of North America. So, when we look back out at that colossal, swirling giant, have you ever wondered if planets have an invisible thermostat? Well, on our neighborhood gas giant, whenever things heat up across the northern skies, a perfectly mirrored cooling effect chills the exact same coordinates down south. And the cosmic seesaw doesn't stop there. Scientists discovered that a warming trend high up in the Jovian stratosphere triggers a plunging deep freeze down below in the troposphere. Think of that bottom layer as the planet's tempestuous basement, home to the most violent cyclones in the solar system. By tracking this massive thermal dance, astrophysicists are chasing a wild dream, crafting the very first accurate daily meteorology reports for a world hundreds of millions of miles away. Eventually, we might use this cosmic weather app to decode the atmospheric rhythms of entirely different gas giants across the galaxy. Yet, wacky weather is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this mammoth world. Buckle up, because we are diving into an ocean of mind-bending planetary secrets. Take a massive revelation from 2018, which exposed that the king of planets actually suffered from severe stunted growth. Picture the dawn of our cosmic neighborhood. Back then, a swirling disk of dusty vapor completely choked the space surrounding our infant sun. Over countless ages, microscopic debris collided and clumped together like rolling snowballs, ultimately forging the worlds we know today. However, our heavyweight champion broke all the rules. Sure, it sprinted right out of the gate. For the first million years, it gobbled up material with a voracious appetite. Then, abruptly, after bulking up to the equivalent of 20 Earths, someone seemingly hit the pause button. The culprit? Strange, supercharged regions materializing in the void of early space. These mysterious barriers blasted out blistering radiation, violently pushing away the very gases the young world needed to consume. This frustrating cosmic diet dragged on for an agonizing 2 million years. Trapped in this energetic bottleneck, the sphere barely managed to creep up to 50 Earth masses. Finally, the invisible floodgates opened, allowing the hungry giant to binge-eat stellar gas until it exploded into a staggering behemoth, packing the weight of 300 Earths. Now, picture Jupiter in your mind, and you instantly see its iconic rusty eye. That swirling crimson vortex is a monstrous hurricane big enough to swallow our home planet twice over. Yet almost nobody whispers a word about its chilling twin, the Great Cold Spot. This phantom feature hid in the shadows until experts sifting through records from a Chilean telescope stumbled upon it. Forged by dazzling polar lights, this mysterious dark bruise plunges a mind-numbing 400 degrees Fahrenheit below the neighboring cloud tops. Since those majestic auroral light shows have danced for millennia, this freezing anomaly boasts an age tag stretching back thousands of years. But here is the kicker. Instead of maintaining a steady shape, this icy phantom constantly morphs, sometimes melting away entirely. Just when you think it is gone, it materializes right back in the high-altitude haze. Its triumphant return almost always follows a spectacular burst of polar radiation. Now, we all know this colossal sphere is practically woven out of tempests. And logic tells us that roaring thunderheads must breed electricity, right? Absolutely. Except the electrical arcs slicing through these alien clouds are utterly bizarre. Emitting invisible radio pulses is perfectly standard behavior for a thunderbolt. However, generations of orbiting probes left scientists scratching their heads over a baffling anomaly. Strangely, the local lightning seemed trapped, humming exclusively on the lowest dial of the frequency spectrum. This completely shattered our understanding, especially since terrestrial thunderbolts scream across the entire radio spectrum, from the deepest rumbles to the sharpest pitches. The veil was finally lifted in 2018, thanks to the brilliant Juno mission. It turns out, the universe wasn't breaking the laws of physics at all. The real culprit was our own primitive listening gear. Because Juno skimmed terrifyingly close to the lethal clouds with unprecedented sensors, it finally caught the screaming megahertz and gigahertz bursts we had been missing all along. Yet, even with that puzzle solved, the data revealed a profound electrical divide between our world and theirs. Here at home, you will almost never see lightning rods lighting up the freezing poles. Terrestrial storms furiously hoard all their electrical fireworks for the tropical equator. Have you ever wondered what a thunderstorm looks like on a world without a solid surface? While the middle of this enormous gas sphere remains perfectly calm and lightning-free, the extreme top and bottom light up like cosmic fireworks, blasting out 4 massive electrical bolts every single second. Let us rewind back to the year 2017, when stargazers were desperately hunting for a legendary, unseen world at the very edge of our neighborhood, noticing an invisible phantom force pulling on icy rocks from way beyond the boundaries we know. Convinced they were finally about to catch the ultimate cosmic prize, researchers aimed an incredibly massive observatory straight into that dark pocket of space. By pure cosmic luck, the mighty king of our planetary neighborhood happened to be photobombing their exact line of sight. While that elusive ghost world remained entirely hidden, the team hit an unexpected jackpot, stumbling upon 10 completely hidden rocky companions dancing around the massive striped sphere. Thanks to that lucky accident, the total head count for this giant's chaotic family skyrocketed to 79 distinct little worlds. However, the absolute most mind-blowing part of this discovery was a single, tiny space rock completely breaking the laws of cosmic traffic. To understand why, you have to picture these celestial companions traveling together in massive, synchronized herds. A pair of these fresh discoveries were cruising along a normal path, flowing smoothly alongside a crowd moving exactly the way Jupiter spins. Meanwhile, a much larger swarm was essentially traveling down a one-way street in reverse, flying totally backward against the giant spin. Then there is our little rebel. It was caught right in the middle of that backward flying crowd, yet stubbornly moving forward with the planet's momentum. Sadly, being a cosmic daredevil carries a heavy price, pretty much guaranteeing this tiny orb is doomed to an early grave. Plunging headfirst into an oncoming swarm of space debris is like driving up the wrong side of the highway. A catastrophic, rock-shattering crash is absolutely inevitable. Have you ever stared through a telescope at those stunning, swirling ribbons wrapping around the largest sphere in our neighborhood? Those vibrant caramel and milky white storms look beautiful on the surface. But for decades, no human alive could figure out just how far down the paint job actually went. That massive mystery was finally cracked wide open in the year 2018, thanks to a completely revolutionary approach to peering beneath the thick clouds. They enlisted a fearless robotic explorer named Juno, a heavy-duty spacecraft sweeping around the giant sphere once every 53 days. During every single close-up dive, this incredible machine mapped out the invisible, tugging grip of gravitational forces reaching up from the depths. By charting those invisible forces, astrophysicists were able to carve out a massive 3-dimensional blueprint of the twisting weather systems. Think of it this way. Whenever the downward drag feels remarkably heavy, it means there is an enormous amount of physical stuff packed tightly directly beneath it. Once they analyzed that invisible weight map, the team realized those gorgeous surface currents were actually bottomless oceans of churning atmosphere. In fact, the vast majority of these roaring storm bands plunged down an unbelievable 1,800 miles into the crushing darkness. However, because this entire enormous world is basically just fluid vapor, the phenomenally fierce hurricanes constantly drag colossal amounts of weight from one place to another, turning the underlying math into an absolute nightmare for the brightest minds. Beyond its wild storms, this titan wields an invisible energy shield that completely dominates everything else in our cosmic backyard. We are talking about a colossal force field that is a staggering 20,000 times more intense than the one protecting our own homeworld. But historically speaking, space experts naturally assumed it worked just like ours. A gigantic bar magnet, smoothly linking top and bottom regions with perfectly organized invisible loops. Yet, when our robotic scout took a closer look, it proved that the invisible forces up there are an absolute tangled mess, while the lower half actually acts relatively normal and somewhat predictable. The upper hemisphere is absolute chaos, featuring violently twisting ribbons of energy and broken magnetic fragments, some completely missing their opposite electrical partner. To make things even more baffling, there appears to be a completely rogue secondary negative zone just hanging out near the equator. What could possibly power this bizarre engine? Researchers suspect a crushing, deep-core ocean of sloshing, liquid metallic hydrogen is cranking out these twisted electrical currents. If the brightest minds on Earth can ultimately untangle this twisted, invisible web, they might finally shine a light into the pitch-black, mysterious heart of this monstrous, swirling sphere. Before cracking the core, though, they desperately need to decipher the incredibly chaotic, mind-bending mechanics happening at the extreme top and bottom of the world. Now, speaking of mind-bending cosmic mysteries, the space agency just dropped an absolute bombshell of a revelation. They have uncovered the most compelling clues yet that our dusty red neighbor might have actually harbored living organisms. If you packed your bags and flew there today, what would you actually witness? Close your eyes, fuel up your imagination, and take a mental trip with me. Your entire field of vision is flooded with deep rust and crimson hues, far richer than any earthly desert, while a massive, swirling wall of red sand brews angrily in the distance. Out of nowhere, an impossibly alien silhouette emerges through the suffocating haze, sending an immediate, freezing shiver straight down your spine. Have you ever pictured a true Martian? You might imagine a towering figure, dwarfing any human, sporting freakishly long, spindly limbs, vibrant orange skin, and massively oversized eyes. Those giant peepers would look exactly like gleaming glass lenses. And when you really break down the physics, that bizarre design is perfectly logical. Think about the pull of gravity on the red planet. It is roughly 38% less intense than what we experience right here on Earth. Without that heavy invisible weight pushing down, any local resident would naturally stretch out to an incredible height. Just look at our own astronauts venturing into the cosmos. They frequently gain up to 2 inches in stature simply because the lack of gravity lets the fluid cushioning their spine expand. Now, what about that striking citrus-colored complexion? That is essentially a built-in spacesuit designed to block out deadly cosmic rays. Unlike our homeworld, Mars completely lacks a protective magnetic shield, leaving its surface entirely defenseless against harsh blasts of solar energy. To survive, a native species would have to swap out human melanin for something far more resilient, like carotenoids. That is the exact same chemical compound responsible for painting carrots, pumpkins, and tomatoes in those vivid, fiery hues. And concerning those massive, captivating visual organs, they would act like giant light sponges, capturing the faint glow of our distant sun far more effectively than standard human vision ever could. But wait just a second. If you were hoping for a sci-fi tale about gangly alien neighbors, I have to burst your bubble. Because the actual biological traces we just found up there look radically different. Yet, to the experts peering through their microscopes, this reality is every bit as mind-blowing. Just 12 months ago, NASA deployed the Perseverance rover, history's priciest all-terrain robotic explorer, which stumbled upon a parched, ancient waterway dusted with bizarre, reddish rings that researchers dubbed leopard spots. Based on the analysis from a leading space agency researcher, those peculiar markings could very well be the fossilized echoes of primordial organisms that thrived on that world billions of years in the past. Suddenly, the scientific community believes they have pieced together the true appearance of these diminutive Martian inhabitants. Let me be completely clear. We are absolutely not talking about monsters swinging tentacles or blinking giant eyes. The red planet is a brutal frontier, baking under a relentless sun before plummeting to a bone-chilling -225 degrees Fahrenheit once darkness falls. Combine that extreme temperature swing with weak gravity and a lethal dose of cosmic radiation. Because of that harsh environment, any surviving organism would have to be incredibly tiny, essentially operating on a microscopic bacterial scale. Assuming, and this is a massive leap of faith, that any highly developed organism ever emerged out there in the dust, it would require absolute superhero-level adaptations just to stay alive. Getting back to our robotic detective, while navigating a region known as Bright Angel, Perseverance captured images of those strange mottled patterns. In the realm of geology, experts refer to these formations as reaction fronts. To put it simply, they are ancient chemical battlegrounds where intense molecular activity occurred eons ago. The high-tech cameras identified two very specific compounds hiding inside those rings: vivianite and greigite. Down here on our home turf, vivianite naturally emerges during the decomposition of biological matter, while greigite is a direct byproduct manufactured by invisible single-celled life. A prominent voice within the research team dropped a massive bombshell, stating the chemical signatures locked in those rocks are a perfect mirror image match for the microbial byproducts we study right here on Earth. He practically shouted from the rooftops that this discovery might just be our ultimate smoking gun proof of alien biology to date. Naturally, skeptics pointed out the possibility that these shapes were simply sculpted by random, lifeless geological forces. The universe is deeply chaotic, perfectly capable of drawing weird shapes without any assistance from extraterrestrial bugs. Yet, following 12 grueling months of relentless data crunching, peer reviews, and likely oceans of strong espresso, the researchers are proudly staking their reputations on the belief that they have uncovered an authentic biological fingerprint. This begs the ultimate question: what exactly was the nature of this extraterrestrial life? While the modern Jezero crater, a massive collision scar resting slightly above the planet's equator, looks like nothing more than a lifeless expanse of dry dirt today, rewinding the clock several billion years reveals a vibrant, overflowing reservoir, a genuine alien lake. Researchers strongly suspect that this ancient basin featured frigid, nutrient-dense pockets, creating the ultimate cozy oasis for single-celled organisms to thrive. These microscopic pioneers likely sustained themselves by devouring raw elements such as carbon, alongside sulfur and phosphorus, extracted directly from the surrounding stone. And the waste material they left behind over countless millennia is exactly what we are staring at right now when we look at those rusty, spotted patterns. Despite the utterly brutal environment raging across the Martian exterior, bombarded by relentless cosmic rays and plunged into bone-chilling cold, microscopic organisms might have carved out a fragile, day-to-day existence. Researchers emphasize that flowing rivers once existed there, firmly placing this dusty world within the realm of habitability. However, because our only clues are microscopic whispers embedded in stone, the true nature and behavior of these ancient entities remain a profound mystery. Yet, by examining our own blue marble, we can piece together some fascinating theories. Think of these alien life forms as mirrors to Earth's most resilient survivors, the extremophiles. Picture those invincible microscopic warriors thriving inside boiling geothermal pools, miles beneath the crust, or across sun-scorched badlands where no plant could ever sprout. This brings us to a tantalizing puzzle. Did the red planet ever support anything larger or more intricate than simple cells? The odds point to a definitive no. Assuming those peculiar spotted patterns on Martian rocks are genuine biological footprints, researchers suspect these colonies did not isolate themselves. They probably flourished across the entire planetary sphere. Currently, our robotic explorer is scanning primeval formations far beyond the Jezero Basin, hunting for evidence of a widespread biosphere. The catch? This neighboring world transformed into a nightmare alarmingly fast, Biological sparks might have ignited there simultaneously with our own world's genesis. Yet, roughly 1 billion years later, violent stellar gales began stripping away its protective atmospheric shield. This catastrophic event swiftly reduced a vibrant landscape into a desolate, frozen desert. Plunging temperatures, deadly stellar glare, and vanishing oceans created a gauntlet completely impassable for complex organisms. For perspective, multicellular fauna required a staggering 3 billion years to materialize here on Earth, and our home globe offered a far more nurturing, stable paradise. Had any sophisticated biology managed to emerge on our rusty neighbor, it would require nearly supernatural adaptations. Think heavily armored membranes or subterranean burrowing skills, just to escape the deadly ultraviolet bombardment and sub-zero chills. These hypothetical creatures would need to sustain themselves entirely on microscopic droplets of moisture, functioning much like incredibly resilient reptiles in the driest dunes, or mirroring the bizarre deep ocean scavengers clustering around boiling volcanic fissures. While confirming our first genuine extraterrestrial fossil might take considerable patience, our minds are entirely free to envision the spectacular possibilities of the cosmos. What if we ventured beyond our rocky neighbors to imagine the incredible, complex fauna that might dominate the rest of our solar neighborhood? Imagine an organism native to the gas giant Jupiter. You would likely envision an abyssal crustacean equipped with a heavily plated exoskeleton, massive panoramic vision, aquatic appendages, and specialized breathing vents. Such extreme biological engineering would be an absolute necessity against the crushing gravitational forces, lethal magnetic storms, and bottomless fluid depths defining this colossal world. Descending into its atmosphere, you initially encounter only swirling vapor storms. Plunge further, however, and those chaotic vapors compress into a boundless conducting sea of liquefied elements. It is hardly surprising that any native life forms would demand the ultimate biological shielding. Now, drift outward to the ringed wonder of our system, a realm defined by endless, sweeping atmospheric bands. Saturn is famously less dense than water, meaning it would comfortably bob in a galaxy-sized pool. Within this buoyant environment, you might encounter colossal celestial medusas drifting gracefully, gliding through dense aerosol mists. These parachute-like beings would utilize trailing gossamer appendages rather than solid limbs. Internal bones would instantly shatter under the immense atmospheric weight pressing down on them. Therefore, a gelatinous, free-flowing anatomy offers the ultimate evolutionary advantage. Next, we journey toward the frozen fringes to marvel at the twin ice behemoths. These distant spheres resemble massive, freezing mixtures, swirling with volatile chemicals and heavy liquids. Fascinatingly, bedrock is entirely non-existent here, replaced completely by frigid, churning seas hidden beneath suffocating layers of gas. Picture coming face to face with a heavily built amphibious creature, sporting short arms, webbed claws, and tough armor-like scales. Why the bulky build? These icy worlds boast much stronger gravitational pulls than our home planet, paired with bone-chilling sub-zero climates. To withstand that immense atmospheric weight, any alien inhabitant would absolutely rely on compact, incredibly powerful appendages. Those specific traits would allow it to glide effortlessly through glacial depths, while fiercely hoarding its essential body heat. Zooming closer to the sun, we make our initial pit stop at the innermost rocky world. From this scorching vantage point, our local star looms large, appearing a massive 3 times larger in the sky than it does from Earth. The climate violently shifts between deep freeze conditions and a scorching furnace, meaning any potential resident would practically need metal-plated skin just to endure. Its exterior would have to be perfectly seamless and sleek. Built-in solar shades would defend its vision against the blinding glare, since this planet lacks a protective atmospheric shield to block out the relentless stellar bombardment. Biology on this desolate rock demands an anatomy engineer to brush off extreme thermal shifts and deadly radiation without immediately turning to ash. Next up on our planetary tour is Earth's evil twin. Standing on its surface would mimic the crushing physical sensation of diving an entire mile beneath the ocean. Constant magma eruptions violently reshape the landscape, while the atmosphere is hot enough to liquefy lead. Talk about a relaxing getaway. Any organism brave enough to call this hellscape home would be reduced to nothing more than a tiny, featureless puddle of biology. We are talking 0 limbs and absolutely no facial features, because this environment is unforgivably brutal. Between the overwhelming atmospheric weight, the blistering heat, and the poisonous clouds, only the most resilient microscopic germs stand a chance. Considering those extreme vacation options, I think I will just book a one-way ticket to a sandy beach on Earth instead. So, my fellow cosmic explorers, let us test your knowledge of our local stellar neighborhood. Can you name the world that weighs in at more than double the mass of every other planetary body put together? Its entire surface is painted with breathtaking bands and mesmerizing spirals. Those beautiful patterns are actually violent tempests of freezing ammonia and water vapor, suspended in a thick haze of hydrogen and helium gas. Need another hint? Feast your eyes on this legendary crimson vortex. That is an ancient, swirling hurricane completely dwarfing the Earth in size, spinning furiously for hundreds of years on end. Spot on. We are looking at the magnificent king of planets itself. But the real mystery we need to unravel is whether this colossal giant acts as Earth's cosmic guardian or its ultimate doom. Right now, humanity's Juno spacecraft is diving deep into its orbit, beaming back mountains of invaluable scientific intel. To grasp its sheer scale, picture lining up 11 whole Earths side by side just to bridge its middle. Think of it this way. If our world were a tiny green grape, this beast would be the size of a regulation basketball. Taking its rightful place, this celestial heavyweight is the 5th planetary body from our star. It traces a massive path roughly 484 million miles out into the void. While we humans naturally view our little sapphire sphere as the absolute center of the universe, we are actually just passengers hitching a ride in a neighborhood completely ruled by this titan. When you crunch the numbers, it hoards a staggering 75% of the total planetary mass available in our stellar backyard. In fact, you would need to pile up 318 Earths just to equal its sheer bulk. Ultimately, what the king wants, the king takes. Whether that means casually tossing cosmic debris across the system, it accomplishes this effortlessly, flexing an unbelievable gravitational muscle that literally bends the void to its will. Its immense pull violently snatches building blocks away from the nearby asteroid belt, preventing loose space rocks from ever assembling into anything grand. Which is exactly why that lone celestial object remains the solitary dwarf planet trapped in our inner orbit. This colossal sphere has an absolutely insatiable appetite. It routinely devours wayward comets, stray asteroids, and any other cosmic crumbs drifting too close, almost as if it were playing a game. And then it violently slingshots whatever space debris it snags out into chaotic, unpredictable paths through the dark. Over its incredibly long 4.5 billion year lifespan, this gravitational bully has undoubtedly unleashed immeasurable cosmic chaos. Yet, there is a fascinating twist to this violent history. A growing number of astronomers suspect that humanity and our precious blue rock only exist today because of that exact same gravitational shield. It seems like a massive paradox, right? Does this massive world act as our cosmic shield, actively sweeping up interstellar threats before they reach us? Yet, plenty of experts fiercely debate that exact narrative. Instead, they picture our planetary neighbor as a cosmic bully, disrupting otherwise harmless icy wanderers and flinging them into chaotic new paths. Think about it. The true terrors of our galactic neighborhood are those deep space drifters with incredibly long orbital cycles. Picture colossal mountains forged entirely from frozen debris and ancient stone, emerging out of the shadowy abyss of the Oort cloud, way out past Pluto. Occasionally, these icy titans get nudged toward the sun's warm embrace, violently slingshotting around our local star. In fact, it is highly probable that Earth's deadliest mass die-off was triggered by one of these exact deep space missiles. Whenever these ancient wanderers plummet inward, they inevitably wrestle with the immense gravitational pull of our largest world. The monstrous sphere tosses them around like weightless toys. Sometimes it simply swallows these frozen boulders whole, like cosmic appetizers. So, does this massive neighbor actually bat these lethal projectiles away to protect our fragile blue home? Or is it playing a deadly game of billiards, actively deflecting otherwise harmless rocks directly into our crosshairs? The jury is still out. Interestingly, scientists often refer to this colossal sphere as a star that never quite made the cut. It is absolutely packed with hydrogen and helium, the exact same ingredients that fuel our sun. Yet it lacks the sheer bulk required to ignite its own internal furnace. Ignition is the fundamental secret behind how every sun generates its blazing power. Deep within their hearts, crushing forces and unimaginable temperatures force hydrogen particles to bond into helium. This violent transformation radiates outward as blinding illumination and intense warmth. To spark that kind of atomic fire and graduate to stellar status, our neighboring giant would need to multiply its current heft by 75. Here is a wild contradiction, though. Packing on extra weight would actually shrink the planet's waistline. All that extra matter would skyrocket its density, causing the entire sphere to collapse inward under its own terrifying gravity. Researchers are fairly confident that even if you quadrupled its total material, its overall diameter would not grow an inch. Orbiting this behemoth is a family of somewhere between 80 and 95 natural satellites. Yet Europa completely steals the spotlight right now. Picture a silent, utterly iced-over wasteland. It is a primordial relic, born roughly 4.5 billion years ago. Starved of solar warmth, its entire surface is locked in an incredibly thick glacial armor. In terms of scale, it sits somewhere between our own lunar companion and the dwarf planet Pluto. Such is the stark reality of Europa, the sixth closest attendant to the gas giant, and a heavyweight among our system's many moons. But the absolute most mind-blowing aspect of this distant orb? It could be hiding alien biology. Experts view this icy sphere as our top candidate across the entire cosmic neighborhood for discovering biology completely separate from Earth. The reason? A colossal global sea of salt water sloshing beneath the crust, plunging anywhere from 40 to 100 miles deep. Sure, it sits trapped beneath a frozen shell estimated at 10 to 20 meters thick, yet the waters below could be perfectly suited for living organisms. Scientists have spotted monumental geysers shooting upward through massive fractures in that frozen exterior. These eruptions violently blast the hidden ocean's secrets straight out into the void. Shifting focus, researchers spent decades scratching their heads over the dazzling X-ray light shows happening at the gas giant's poles. What exactly powers these radiant cosmic displays? It appears that this 40-year-old enigma finally has a concrete answer. The spectacular high-energy glow is actually sparked by highly electrified atoms known as ions. These charged elements slam violently into the upper atmospheric layers, painting the dark sky with intense radiation. However, the real head-scratcher was figuring out how those energetic travelers reached such a high altitude to begin with. Ever wonder what drives the most intense phenomena in space? Lately, researchers have caught charged particles literally riding the waves of Jupiter's immense magnetic network. These cosmic surfers plunge straight down into the violent, swirling skies of the massive world. We cracked this interstellar mystery using the brilliant instruments aboard NASA's Juno probe, coupled with the watchful eye of the European Space Agency's XMM Newton Observatory circling our own globe. Here on Earth, you can only catch the northern or southern lights in a specific ring around the poles, situated roughly between latitudes 65 and 80. Push past that 80-degree mark, and the dazzling light show completely vanishes into thin air. Yet, the invisible glowing X-ray halos crowning Jupiter play by a totally different, beautifully chaotic set of rules. These brilliant flashes throb wildly way beyond the typical polar boundaries. What is even more mind-blowing is that the northern lights often look completely distinct from the southern ones. Researchers eventually cracked the code, realizing these rhythmic beats mirror the trembling of the gas giant's own magnetic shield. Imagine a colossal spinning top. As this gigantic globe twirls, it drags its massive magnetic bubble along for the ride. When violent gusts of solar energy slam into this bubble, the whole invisible barrier gets squeezed incredibly tight. That intense pressure basically cooks up the charged matter trapped inside the magnetic web. This sends those superheated sparks sliding down invisible cosmic tracks, sparking an absolutely breathtaking glowing display. But let us zoom in on the true celebrity of this gas giant. That iconic crimson eye. It is a colossal, never-ending hurricane tearing across the lower half of the planet. The peak of this massive tempest reaches over 5 miles higher than the cloudy landscape swirling around it. To put its sheer scale in perspective, you could easily fit 2 entire Earths side by side inside this beast.
Along the outer rim, howling gales rip through at anywhere from 270 to 420 miles an hour, blowing our most destructive tornadoes out of the water. The thick, boiling atmosphere of this world is a perpetual motion machine of churning, lifting, and sinking vapors, similar to the weather patterns we experience at home.